What's up everyone, I'm Twisted, and today I'll try to explain the lore of the new season cinematic. Emphasis on the word try here because, to be honest, even after watching it multiple times, I'm still not sure of everything that's happening. But there are good reasons for this. This is our first piece of lore of 2026, so we are still missing a lot of context. On top of that, this is a cinematic. Cinematics are really good at showing us these cool moments, but they aren't so good when it comes to actual storytelling. Mostly because it's just impossible to tell a story featuring so many characters and locations in less than 5 minutes. So of course a lot of the context has to be given outside of the cinematic itself, but we haven't gotten that yet. Last year, when the Noxin cinematic was released, we didn't know what this symbol was, we didn't know who this guy was, who sent Katarina to kill him, etc. We had our theories, of course, but nothing was confirmed at the time. And some things were only explained at the very end of 2025. And this year is no different. Most of what we see here is likely going to be properly explained in the following weeks. So the cinematic is definitely something we'll have to come back to at the end of season 1, maybe even at the end of the year, to really understand what's happening. So with this disclaimer out of the way, let's finally check out the new cinematic, Salvation. This cinematic is divided into 4 separate scenes, each focusing on different champions and each in a different setting. Let's first focus on the one with Yunara and Jarvan, since that's the one we understand the most. This starts with a cloaked figure riding a horse in a dark forest. We can notice this blue magic everywhere in the forest, the same magic that's also present in this deer that will be chasing the character for most of the cinematic. Now, I'm not sure what these are. I don't think they are tied to Nocturne because all scenes seem to be independent from each other, and I believe Nocturne is hinted at in Sona's scene. Most likely these are just magical creatures that live in the forests around Demacia. We know from the Mage Seeker game that these forests are full of magical beasts, and that the forests themselves are as magical as the ones in Ionia. These magical forests are also mentioned in Katarina's comic, in Legends of Runeterra, and maybe also in this panel right here from the Warning comic from last year. So perhaps there's not much to these beasts, but we'll have to wait to find out. As I said, these can be seen chasing a hooded figure. We can see them passing through a field of what I believe are poppy flowers, very reminiscent of Poppy's splash art in League. Then we get the reveal that this was actually Yunara, and we see that she's carrying the tip of Shin's spear. Last year, we saw Shin break his spear when fighting a demon in Ionia. Then, thanks to the Kinku, he got a new handle from the branch of a Spirit Blossom tree. We don't see it breaking again before Shin dies, so why Yunara only has the tip will probably be left for interpretation. Yunara is getting overwhelmed by the beasts, despite having fought the Darking and their armies in the past, though we never see her with her weapon here. It's possible that she either lost her ability to control the beads, or that these simply don't work so far from Ionia. It was always hinted that the Ion Erna were tied to the spirit of Ionia somehow, so I can see this being the reason she doesn't use them in this cinematic. We do see her using magic, however, in these 2 shots right here, a clear reference to her E in League, so she's not completely defenseless. Then Jarvan shows up riding a Silverwing. In the current timeline, Jarvan is still the prince of Demacia, and Silverwings are these griffin-like creatures that can be found in the kingdom. Him riding a Silverwing was hinted at in the letter that content creators got from Riot to promote the new season. This letter was an invitation to join the Demacian Silverwing Riders. Clearly a teaser for the cinematic, but we'll have to wait and see if it was also a teaser for something else. Somehow 3 Silverwings diving to the ground takes out a whole herd of magic deer. Finally, we see Yunara giving Jarvan the tip of Shin's spear, showing us that this was her goal. This is why she came all the way from Ionia to Demacia. Now, why was she riding a horse instead of sailing in the vessel that took Shin to Ionia? I have no idea. We'll have to wait and see if that's something that the writers thought about, or just a detail they avoided in order to tell this specific story. Still, this moment was teased in the recent update we got to the Summoner's Rift. There we can also find the tip of Shin's spear, but that version is based on his spear before he got the new handle. Jarvan and Shin were quite close. Jarvan was trained by him since he was a child, so it makes sense for him to receive Shin's spear tip. But of course, neither of them talk or explain anything. Jarvan's expression doesn't even change. We're here for hype moments, not narrative. I do hope one of the upcoming motion comics explores this encounter right here. Here we have a good look at Jarvan's new design, or perhaps just one of his many armors. One detail I have to point out is this crest on his shoulders. This was also present in the letter sent to content creators, and it's also present in the map next to Citria's sword. We will likely be seeing it again throughout the season. I assume this represents a part of the Demacian military, maybe the Silverwing Riders in specific. This scene ends with a shot of the capital of Demacia. At least I believe this is the capital, but if so, then they are taking some creative liberties here, because where Yunara and Jarvan are should just be sea and not a forest. unless I'm missing something. As I said many times, I don't expect this season to be a sequel to the previous one. It's a continuation, sure, but not a sequel. The same way we saw Mel's story continue in 2025, but the lore of that year wasn't really a sequel to Arcane. I think the same thing will happen this year, with this Yunara plot being something smaller in the big picture of 2026. But of course, I could be wrong. Finally, this scene, as well as the letter, confirm where we are in the timeline. All scenes are likely happening shortly after the lore we got last year, which itself took place after Swain took over Noxus, but before the Mage Rebellion, which explains why Jarvan's father is still alive, for example. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, chances are that you aren't actually subscribed. If you wanna see more content like this, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Moving over to Garen's scene, we also start in a forest, just a less magical one. Garen is training for the Demacian soldiers. The design of their shields is the same we can find right now on the Summoner's Rift. Garen is sporting a new look, in fact all Demacians are, the biggest difference being the lack of a chest plate. We're also not used to seeing Garen without his shoulder plates and his iconic blue scarf, and he also doesn't have his family crest on his chest. We get this shot which tells us that the 5 Demacians are being watched, and then all of a sudden Garen is hit with a blast of red magic and falls into water. While underwater, the magic turns into these vines around his body. As this happens, the attackers start taking out the Demacian soldiers. We'll discuss them in a second, but first, Garen watches this unfold underwater and gets so mad that he somehow frees himself from the magic. This likely references his W in League, which reduces the duration of crowd control. Now, I believe the Demacians not being so armored in this cinematic was a deliberate choice, because otherwise we lore nerds would be like, technically, their Petricite armor should be absorbing all this magic. So to avoid that and be able to tell this specific story, the Demacians are not fully armored. After Garen gets out of the water, we get a better look at the attackers. I'm pretty confident these are Noxians. The magic they use is very reminiscent of the magic we see in Mel's Vision from last year, and the armor is very clearly Noxian. The square blades on the shoulders are very similar to those we've seen in many LOR cards, and in Cyan's armor as well, for example. The design of the helmet seems brand new, at least by Noxian standards. We don't really know if these are part of the Noxian military or part of the Black Rose. I'm guessing they are part of the Black Rose because of the red magic, but for now I'm not 100% confident. Garen kills 2 of the Noxians. Of course they can't show blood here, but the implication is that he's killing them. We then see the 4 Demacians again, all of them are now dead, and in the center is Garen, looking at the attackers fleeing the scene. He grabs the necklace of one of them and pursues the rest. He impales one of them with his sword, again we can't show blood, steals their necklace as well, he does a little spin, a reference to his E in League, and takes out another one. Finally, he tanks a couple magic shots and gets ready to impale the last one. A nod to the animation he does when using his ultimate in League. During the slash we can see the red magic reacting to Garen's sword. This is because his sword is made out of Petricite, which absorbs magic. We saw the same thing last year with Shin's spear and LeBlanc's magic. Instead of killing the last one, Garen throws them the necklaces of the other attackers and lets them leave. We can see them running away in this shot. I assume Garen did this to send a message. Hey, I could have taken out all of you, go tell that to whoever sent you. The most logical thing here would have been to, capture them, interrogate them, etc. But hey, we are here for hype moments and aura, not logic. Jokes aside, this obviously parallels what happened to Garen, he was also the only one left, and now the Noxian will have to live with that, just as Garen will. In this shot we can see the necklaces all perfectly laying next to each other, despite Garen throwing them at the face of the soldier just moments ago. I wonder if there's something special about these necklaces. Were these the source of their powers? Something that represents their group or faction? Or are these a hint that they belong to the Rose? LeBlanc did also give Mel a necklace in Arcane, though that one belonged to a family that Demacia and her army defeated. It was more a symbol of Mel's trauma and her opposition to her mother than anything else. Anyway, the scene ends by transitioning from the 4 necklaces to Garen looking at the 4 graves of the Demacians. Again, this was very intentional. Also, does Demacia not have a cemetery? Were you training that far from the capital or a village that you had to bury the bodies by yourself in this random forest? Bro, stop aura farming. Now let's check out Sona's scene, which starts with a statue of Morgana, specifically her design from the new skin called Veiled Lady Morgana. The Veiled Lady is what Morgana is known as in Demacia. It's her legend, and according to the lore, her legend doesn't really depict her like this, which makes the skin a little bit confusing in my opinion, but I'm sure we'll get more context about it soon, right? Right? This scene takes place in a city or village somewhere in Demacia. We can see the lights from the buildings going dark, then the camera moves through the streets as shadows begin to engulf the village. We see people being dragged to the shadows, horror movie style. We then see the darkness getting close to this fountain. Here we can clearly see a shadowy hand dragging someone away. Then finally we see Sona sitting in the fountain. She begins using her magic on her instrument, creating light in the darkness. I assume this light is diegetic, as in it's actually manifesting in the world and not just something we the audience see. Around her neck is a necklace, something we do see in some of her designs, but not something she has in League. We see the light from her magic spreading outwards from her instrument, the Etwall. We don't know much about this instrument besides the fact that it predates Demacia and that, well, it's magical. It might seem weird for people to not be scared or suspicious of her magic here, but keep in mind these people are literally being attacked by living shadows. I think they are more worried about that. Either way, it's also worth noting that the further you are from the capital, the less strict people are with magic. Sure, magic is still somewhat taboo and or rare, but we know from stories and the Mage Seeker game that mages do exist and use their magic in the outskirts of the kingdom and in the neighboring kingdoms. This anti-magic ideology comes from the capital, so that's where it is the strongest. In the rural areas, this is not enforced as much. By the lack of soldiers and mage seekers here, this is likely not taking place in the capital. Here in the fountain we can spot a ward, specifically the new Demacian one. We see a boy being taken by the shadows, but Sona uses her magic to save them. This scene ends with her looking away from the people of the village as the sun starts to shine again. Now, what the hell was happening? Good question. My best answer is Nocturne. Nocturne is a demon with powers that allowed him to control shadows, summon beasts made out of shadow, and create nightmares in the minds of mortals. What happened in this cinematic is somewhat similar to what happens in the story for Demacia, where Nocturne hunted an entire settlement before being stopped by Lux. Also, I think what happens in the cinematic could be loosely inspired by Nocturne's ultimate in League. For now, I do think this is tied to him, but we'll have to wait to find out more. Only one scene left. This one starts with a dragon burning some kind of Demacian settlement. This scene takes place inside a cave, so it's possible that this was a Demacian mine or something similar. This dragon is then attacked by Shyvana in her dragon form. This is our first look at her new design that will be coming to League in Act 2 of this season. Here we can also get a good look at the enemy dragon itself. I believe this is supposed to be the Elder Dragon. The horns, the blue on the wings, and especially on the chest do seem inspired by his design in League and LOR. So this is likely him, or at the very least related to him. In LOR, we learn that he is somewhere near Demacia, so his presence in this cinematic is not too surprising. Something worth pointing out here is that the fire he breathes is mostly red instead of being solely blue. I think blue fire is very iconic to Elder Dragon, it's even present in the buff you get from him in the game after all, so it's interesting that they kept the blue in his design but not in his fire. He knocks Shyvana to the ground and she transforms into her humanoid form. This is also our first look at the design that she's going to have in her update. Though I should point out that her design seems closer to the leak from a while ago than the official look we got this week, which is a bit disappointing in my opinion. A dragon lady shouldn't look this smooth. Put some scales on her face, come on. Anyway, the Elder Dragon turns his back on her, but she shouts to get his attention back. Then Valor swoops in. The way he attacks the dragon's face makes me believe this is based on Quinn's Q in League. Speaking of which, here's Quinn herself. Her design is not too different from League or LOR, but unfortunately, just like the other champions, this art style does make her look a bit more generic. As for Valor, unfortunately we can't really get a good look at his design, but it also doesn't seem that different from what we've seen before. Quinn and Valor get the dragon's attention, but it doesn't seem like they thought this through, because the dragon almost roasts Quinn. Thankfully Shyvana transforms back into her dragon form at the last second and saves her. Here we can spot Quinn jumping from Shyvana's back and being grabbed by Valor, an obvious reference to her ultimate in League. Together Shyvana and Quinn trap the dragon inside the cave, probably after everyone else escaped, I assume. I hope. And then their scene ends with them walking away from the cave as Valor flies nearby. It was really cool to see these three, in a cinematic for the first time. And that was it for the new cinematic. We saw the Demacians fighting against, well, the many threats that exist to the kingdom. Magical animals, maybe Noxians, dragons, maybe demons. Seriously, who would want to live here? And again, there are a lot of questions left unanswered. What were the beasts that were following Yunara? How much of her will we see in this season? Who attacked Garen? Who attacked Sona? Who attacked... Okay, this one was probably the Elder Dragon, but I'm still only like 90% sure of that. Did I miss anything? Let me know down below. And also tell me what your thoughts are on the new cinematic. Personally, I think they tried to put too many things in the same cinematic. I wish we had less scenes, but maybe more time in each, if that makes sense. I'm also not a huge fan of the art style or the song, so I don't think the cinematic was really for me. But again, I am really happy to finally see Shyvana and Quinn in a cinematic. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. It's free and you can always change your mind later. I'm Twisted and I'll see you guys in the next video.